And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Wednesday, May 21st. First game of the Eastern Conference Finals. Knicks, Pacers. We got to watch this one last year. We're going to watch it again this year. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. I'm Josh Engelman. That's Greg Ehrenberg. I think we had a pretty good angle on yesterday's game. Worked out decently for me. But now we're here, and this is a game where I have a lot less angles. This feels like a circle to me.
It's pretty hard because you and I were talking about this a little bit before the show. If people were in playback, well, I guess they wouldn't have heard us because we didn't press live until like a minute ago. But we were talking about it ahead of the show and just trying to figure out, like yesterday, we were trying to figure out what spots could the teams go with different rotations. And I think we both had some wins on that. You had pointed out that you thought Isaiah Joe was a good contrarian option from OKC. He certainly was. I thought that Nickeil Alexander-Walker could play extended minutes, which it's the dumbest narrative ever, except it really does seem to hold true that they like to play him extra minutes to match up with SGA a little bit. And then Naz Reid got some extra minutes as well. It just, that part of it didn't work out for me because he couldn't hit anything. He had the opportunity, he had the playing time. He shot like 1 of 9 from the field. But I'm really struggling to find angles like that for today because the Knicks, the Pacers, they don't even have very many buttons they could press to mix things up.
No.
The Pacers, I guess, a little bit more so just because, you know, like maybe they give Mathurin or TJ McConnell a couple extra minutes or something like that. The only real angle that I have from the Knicks side is if they want to get Miles Turner away from the basket, maybe they play less of Cat and Mitchell Robinson together. And maybe that lends itself to like a couple less minutes for Mitchell Robinson, a couple more minutes for Miles McBride. But that's kind of the only real change I could see the Knicks making outside of, you know, foul trouble or somebody getting hurt.
Yeah, there's not much on the Knicks side that I think they're going to break in case of emergency here. I don't think we're going to like put the paddles to Landry Shamet or anything crazy or Precious Achua. I don't think any of that exists right now. We did mention, or at least I did, Jalen Williams with a Y yesterday. Got the wrong Williams. Turns out it's Kenrich, not Jalen Williams with a Y. We'll see how that impacts the rest of this year. I don't think it's going to matter much one way or the other. But yeah, I don't have... This series is puzzling me. I've felt like I had a really good thought process heading into most of these series. Whether they worked out or not is a different story. I don't have it here. This one's a wild card. I think these games are going to be really fun. We're probably going to see some like at least 1 or 2 pretty wild offensive games where like they're just trading buckets because neither one of these teams is particularly great defensively. They have some defensive assets, but neither one of these teams are the better defensive teams that we'll see. So I'm excited from an offensive perspective, but finding the angle of who you need to get to, that's where I think it starts to get weird. Like we could talk about captains, Towns and Brunson and Halliburton, like all the, we could do that, but I think that's pretty cut and dry. I think the most interesting part to talk about for this particular game is Campaign, Miles McBride, TJ McConnell, Mitchell Robinson, Thomas Bryant, Obi Toppin, because these are all the lowest owned guys. Campaign in particular, extra special low owned at like 4% on DraftKings. Those are the spots that I feel like are going to dictate what we're doing here. And I have no real takes on which ones I like the most in that section. What is your pay down du jour? Because we're seeing someone like Thomas Bryant flat min today. Likely plays backup center, but at some point in time in this series, he might not play a second, and that becomes Indiana going small. You got Mitchell Robinson at 4,800 now, coming off a very different series. How is he utilized? I don't know. McConnell at 4,400. Is this a better series, a worse series? What do we do with these guys?
All right, so do you want to start by talking about Thomas Bryant? Do you want to talk about the Knicks guys? Which direction do you want to go first?
Let's talk Thomas Bryant to start. That's going to be more DraftKings oriented than FanDuel. You're probably not really using him on the FanDuel side, but today he's flat min, and he's the only one that's getting anything real from ownership. Campaign is 4%. That's the next highest guy at 1K. No one exists in the 2Ks, and only Miles McBride and Toppin are in the 3. So it's a very distinct difference. What do we do with Thomas Bryant, and how does a backup center for the Pacers dictate the slate?
Yeah. So I'm playing Thomas Bryant. I'm a little bit overweight to the field. We got him projected for about 20% ownership. I have him in a third of my lineups right now. There's certainly a chance he's just out of the rotation, but realistically, in terms of how these teams match up, I do think it makes a little bit more sense for the Pacers to want to go bigger with the backup center minutes, because I think it'd really be problematic for them if it's Obi Toppin trying to guard Karl Anthony Towns. Like that to me is not a matchup that I think would go all that. Cat's just too big and too good on offense. I think he would just absolutely eat Obi Toppin alive if that was the matchup. And then when you get to somebody like Thomas Bryant at 1K, he's not the best fantasy producer in the world, but pretty much all centers are at least adequate. He's around a fantasy point per minute. You get 2 rotations out of Thomas Bryant, say 4 minutes in the first half, 4 minutes in the second half. There's also the opportunity. Miles Turner gets into a shit ton of foul trouble. And Karl Anthony Towns is very live to get Miles Turner into foul trouble. So that's another angle where Thomas Bryant could have to play a few extra minutes. But I do think he's fairly safe to be in the rotation as long as that's the case. If you get like 8 minutes out of him, you land on 8 fantasy points or so from him. And that makes him a pretty good option when he's only 1K.
I had a lot of him earlier today. I have basically neutral to him now. And that's kind of where I want to be. If I'm going to play Thomas Bryant, today would be the day I want to do it, because I do think inevitably he's not going to be out there all that much as this series goes on. But right now I'm basically neutral. Doesn't appear like he's going to be the value guy I'm getting to. You and I talked about it a little bit before the show, and I know you made a slight tweak for it. Miles McBride is the guy that I'm getting to a little bit more. And I think there's a couple paths for him to get additional playing time. One, it's injury, obviously. I feel like Brunson goes to the locker room for like 2 minutes in every game they play. Whether that's foul trouble on Hart or Bridges. If they just want to cut Payne, there's 4 or 5 extra minutes that can go to somebody. I think I'm angling to McBride right now.
Yep, same page for me. The only button the Knicks could realistically press to change the rotation is what I said at the top. And like Mitchell Robinson isn't going anywhere. Miles McBride's still going to be part of the rotation, but those minutes could be allocated a little bit differently. And I think if the Knicks make any changes, the most likely one is a couple minutes go away from Mitchell Robinson and go towards Miles McBride, which in the context of the game is really not going to be a meaningful difference. But it matters a shit ton for DFS, because if all of a sudden Miles McBride plays a couple of extra minutes, then all of a sudden you got a guy who we've currently got projected for about 15% ownership at $3,200. Could he get to, say, instead of like the 12 and a half or 13 fantasy points we have him projected for, if you give him a couple extra minutes, all of a sudden, do you have him then projected for like 14 and a half fantasy points or something like that? And then when you're in that kind of scenario, especially on 1-game slates where it's so projection and price sensitive, I think he's the most under-owned player on the slate, at least relative to what his opportunity is. It's hard to find other guys who are 14, 15% owned that I think have realistic chances to be in the winning lineup. And it's him and kind of nobody else. Like who else is around that ownership range where it's like, oh yeah, this guy is a cheap option who realistically has a path to a ceiling outside of, injury or foul trouble.
Yeah, I mean, like TJ McConnell's probably going to have a game in this series where he's like 5 for 5 late in the first quarter, early in the second quarter. Whether that's today or not, I don't know. I mean, defensively, they don't want to have him out there forever. They like having him out there, to be an irritant more than anything else as we get deeper into these playoffs. Actually, how did his minutes look last year in this series as it went on? I feel like he started playing more. Am I remembering that correctly?
You are correct. And I know at least I think I remember you being correct. The reason I think that is because my dad, who diehard Knicks fan, watches other games as well, but like primarily watches the Knicks. He thinks TJ McConnell is like one of the best players in the league because of that series last year. So that's also what makes me think, like, my dad talks about TJ McConnell all the time. Like that's what my dad's nervous about for this series is TJ McConnell.
Here are the minutes that TJ McConnell played through the 7 games of last year's series. 22, 23, 19, 21, 19, 16. By the way, in that 16-minute game, 7 of 13 from the field. 23 minutes in game 7. So, like, sort of him, but like a little higher, because he was not used like that in the previous series. It was the Cleveland series. He was in the like 15, 16 range. is this a spot where TJ McConnell is now out there for 3 or 4 more minutes, similar to last year? Or is this just, is it, now that it's a slightly different Knicks team, is he more interesting? Because now he's not meeting Isaiah Hartenstein at the rim. He's meeting Cat.
Yeah.
Potentially. Or Mitchell Robinson, if they're overlapping like that. But I'm starting to talk myself into TJ McConnell here.
I want to shout out Chris Williams, gifted out 10 YouTube memberships. So, Chris, as always, thank you for supporting the channel. It's definitely a possibility. One thing of note when it comes to TJ McConnell is those were also the minutes he played kind of throughout the playoffs last year. So, like, they gave him that elevated role, whereas he hasn't gotten that so far this year. If you look at the games that he played against Cleveland, for instance, 10 minutes, 18 minutes, 21 minutes, 14 minutes, 15 minutes. So he played more against the Knicks than he did in the regular season last year, but that was in line with what he did the entire postseason. Whereas this year, he just isn't getting those boosted minutes in the same way in the playoffs. So he's a good fantasy producer when he plays. It feels to me like whenever there's extended minutes for TJ McConnell, he's like a 100% hit rate. I can't remember. I'm sure it's happened, but I can't remember a game where TJ McConnell was uber chalk in DFS and didn't crush. It feels like it happens every single time. He's not chalk today. That's not why I made the reference. It's more just when he gets extended minutes, he typically produces. I just don't know how realistic it actually is that he gets those minutes. I could certainly be on the wrong side of that, though.
T-Money is making the point that Mathurin was out, and that's why you got a minutes boost. Well, you're going to need to take the 25 minutes away from Ben Shepard then in those series, too. There's still minutes out. You could take everything from Ben Shepard and give that to Benedict Mathurin today, and we're in the same spot. I mean, it's a valid point, but they're also not playing Ben Shepard right now like that. So if they were, Ben Shepard would not be 1% owned at 1,600. So to me, it's kind of a wash. You're basically just taking the minutes from Ben Shepard out from last year and swapping them to Mathurin at this point.
Yeah, nothing's ever a clean 1-for-1 or anything like that, but I do think even if Mathurin was in last year, it seemed like they wanted to give those minutes to McConnell in a way that they haven't wanted to give him those minutes this year.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where that goes. My other big talking point, because I only have one. Have we pushed anything yet? Let me check that quickly before we keep going. No, not yet. Have we got, I'm guessing we haven't even gotten lineups officially yet. Oh, Pacers just hit Halliburton, Nembhard, Nesmith, Siakam, Turner. Didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, I'll bet you the Knicks starting lineup will be Brunson, Bridges, Hart, Anunoby, and Cat.
Part of me wants to take that on the off chance
that yet because I haven't been looking, but I bet that's the lineup.
I'm going to assume that it is too. The most interesting part of today to me is who is taking the primary matchup on Jalen Brunson. Last year, they started with Andrew Nembhard, and as they went through these games, they found out pretty quickly that Andrew Nembhard could not guard Jalen Brunson. He didn't have the strength to hold up. Brunson got to his spot whenever he wanted, and Nembhard really couldn't challenge the shot, and Brunson had no problem taking them. By the end of the series, he was getting the full Aaron Nesmith treatment. I feel like they're going to go back to Nembhard to start because their goal would be for him to just have worked on it over the past year and try to hold up in that spot a little bit more. If it's Nembhard, I like Brunson a little bit more because I think he'll still succeed. If it's Nesmith, I don't like it as much for Brunson until Brunson puts him in foul trouble, and then we're back to square one. Do you care about the matchup at all for game one, or is it just sort of like we don't know and it's hard to move forward?
Yeah, I would say it's more we don't know. And I don't know about you. I'm really flat to the top end guys. The top end guys relative to the ownership is kind of right where I land. Where I have differences from the field, it's something like we meant like Miles McBride, playing a little bit more of him. I've got a little bit more of Thomas Bryant. Those are some of the spots I'm getting different. But Jalen Brunson is 48% owned in the flex. I've got 48% of him in my lineups. Jalen Brunson is 17% owned in the captain spot. I've got 19% of him in the captain spot. Cat is 23% on the captain spot. I got 23% of him in the captain spot. He's 46% on the flex. I got 42%. So I'm not really getting different on the high end as much. And I don't know, any speculation making about the matchups, we'll know more after this game is played out. But I don't think it's going to make too big of a difference in the series.
Okay. I'm with you on the like guys you're getting to, guys you're not getting to. I'm neutral to all of the main dudes, but I'm light on, or like I'm over on Miles McBride in a pretty big way. I'm under, at least for right now, on my boy TJ McConnell. I'm light on Neesmith. I'm light on Bridges, who I don't see in this series the same way I saw him in the Boston series. But like when I look at the leverage column and I look in the middle where it's all the like 0, -1, +1, that's all the good players. Miles Turner, Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, they're all packed here. Towns, I have 2% more at the flex for Towns. Those aren't the guys that I'm going to get different with because I don't have a lean on the best players. But I think I could take a lean on some of the bench guys, and that's the path forward.
Yeah. So we've talked about some of the bench guys, like you and I are both overweight to McBride. I'm curious who the players are from the bench that you're underweight to the field to, because I have a couple of them. And this isn't, I shouldn't say necessarily bench guys, more like the role players, I should say, because like for me, one of them is Neesmith, for example. Clearly not a bench guy, but he's not a primary guy either. Like those are some of the guys who I've got some of the underweight stances to.
Neesmith is one of those guys that I'd either want to be like 2x the field or half the field. He's just like, he's a guy that's either going to blow up. Yeah, it's half the field for me as well. He's the guy that's either going to blow up and have a bunch of additional defensive stats and runouts, or, you know, he picks up 2 fouls early. He loses 6 minutes to somebody else. For right now, I'm light and I'm okay with that. Well, I got a name now that I didn't expect to say. We'll see what that looks like when we push anything, if we push anything new here. But my third highest positive leverage play is a guy whose name we did not speak yet on this show.
Josh Hart?
No, Jarus Walker.
Okay, I was thinking like who's a guy who that could potentially be. Do I have Jarus? No, I've got 2% of him.
2%. All right, I have 10.
Okay. I mean, he's 2% owned, so you're 5x the field on him.
Yeah. Now that could change very easily as we update and rerun this bad boy, but I mean, I don't hate the idea of having a different 1K punt. They could play him more, you know, if they're looking to get a little bit more size on the perimeter, try to guard, you know, get him out there as a bigger wing option. If it's going to happen, you know, it feels like game 1 or game 5 when you're throwing shit against the wall. I'm not confident in that one. I'm just going to put that out there right now. He could very easily not play a second.
Neesmith gets into foul trouble. That's probably his best opportunity. The most realistic opportunity for Walker is him getting into foul trouble.
Or Siakam, I guess. But I feel like Siakam just plays 33 minutes every game and nothing ever changes.
Yeah, I'm not playing Jarus Walker meaningfully. Not that you are in like a massive way either. Just as a super contrarian option. Like it's not the end of the world that you have 10% of them or whatever.
Yeah, we're talking about a guy projected for 5.4 fantasy points, at least in our last run. Not exactly a monster number.
Yeah,
I'll poke to FanDuel very quickly, just to placate chat a bit.
Mm-hmm. We also got a super chat from Malukar who wants to know who's the cheap player at MVP to be different on FanDuel.
That was the prompt for me to take a look at this. We also got an ownership update 1 minute ago. So everything I have on the screen right now is our up-to-date, fresh ownership for right now, which means that I'm going to run one final sim. But right now, if Malakar is trying to get different at the MVP spot, we have 3 guys that are getting legitimate ownership in Brunson, Hart, and Towns. They're 15 to 20% owned at that spot. And then everybody else is going to be single digits. I'd say Miles Turner looks mildly unique to me as a slightly different option. I think Siakam at 6% is kind of interesting if you were trying to get a little different. And then $6,800 Nembhard will probably allow you to get a lot more relevant players in your lineup. And he could very easily play 36 minutes today or something. I think any one of those guys in that like 5 to 8 range are pretty interesting.
So I don't know if there's a specific price point that Malukar had in mind here, because there's a couple of different ways that I like to answer this question. If it's just like not the Brunson, Halliburton, Cat guys, then Josh Hart is somebody who I like to save some salary with at the MVP spot. If you're talking about an actual like cheap punt where you're just going stars and scrubs, you're going with a cheap guy at the MVP spot and then you're paying up for a bunch of spots. Mitchell Robinson's a considerably better scorer for FanDuel purposes than DraftKings just because of the defensive stats. I mean, we've seen it. Like, you get a game from Mitchell Robinson, he could have 2 steals and 4 blocks in just a few minutes, and then all of a sudden he has a significantly better looking game on FanDuel than DraftKings. He's only 2% owned in the MVP spot. I think he's a better play on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings because of the defensive stat bonus. So if you're looking Malakar for like a punt, it's not my favorite way to build lineups. I don't think it's completely necessary, but Mitchell Robinson in the FanDuel lineups I ran, I have him in 4% of lineups in the MVP spot where he's 2% owned. He's the only cheap guy who showed up in lineups for me in the MVP spot.
Malakar said under 9K. So that fits for you. The guys we're talking about then are going to be Bridges, Anunoby, Nembhard, Neesmith, and then we're getting down into like the true cheapies.
Well, if he's looking for the MVP pricing sub 9K, though, the only one because all those other guys, like Mitchell Robinson's 5,100, but those other guys, Bridges is 12K, Neesmith is 9,300. Mitchell Robinson's the only one I got exposure to under that price point on FanDuel for the MVP.
There we go. Well, we talked a little DraftKings. We just hit on Malakar's FanDuel question, but to hit on the best possible thing we could talk about before we get out of here is PGA Millie. Promo code PGAMILLY. Link in the description. We're celebrating Dr. Rex Goodfellow's Millie win this past weekend in the PGA streets. Look at that $1 million just on the screen. Got to be fun. Buy 2 months of a Stokastic Core All Access package. That'll cover baseball, basketball, hockey, golf, NASCAR, and MMA. You buy those 2 months, you get one free. Think about it like this. 33% off your summer at Stokastic. It's the summer of Stokastic. It's the summer of Millie winners. You guys can come in, get 2 months and an additional month for free by using that promo code PGA Millie. Greg, what are we missing? What do we got to touch on that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, one thing I'll just add
what angle do you have?
Well, one thing I was going to add to Dr. Rex's GPP win is he won so much money on Sunday that he came in second in the $5 for 40K, and nobody cares or talks about it because it's like it's throwaway. It's a portion of the big money he won. But yeah, that deal also with the
couldn't
PGA
even win. What a loser.
The PGA tournament locks tomorrow morning. So if you want to take advantage of that promo, do it tonight because that is going to be expiring tomorrow morning early, maybe before you guys are even up. So take advantage of that offer now if you're going to take advantage of that. We got that super chat as well. I see you just put up on screen.
Yeah. Hi, Josh and Greg. I'm playing on FanDuel tonight. My stand is Ben Shepard and Miles McBride and a mini stand on Obi Toppin. Thanks, guys. I would go ahead and take that Ben Shepard stand and immediately get rid of it.
Yeah, unless his stand is not playing him. Do I have any Ben Shepard lineups? The other thing, too, is we talked about this a little bit last night with some of the FanDuel pricing as well. It's so soft that it's not necessary to take crazy punts in the same kind of way. Like last night, for instance, Naz Reid was a punt option. Like he ended up being in the winning lineups on FanDuel last night, despite shooting 1 of 9 from the field because he was just so woefully mispriced. By the way, shout out to the Knicks for putting out that, not that we didn't know what the starting lineup was going to be, but they waited until 7 minutes before tip-off, which you never know. Tibbs playing games. Did he fuck up the Pacers game plan by waiting to throw out his starting lineup? He probably thinks so.
So sneaky.
Yeah, very, very sneaky. Threw them off for sure. There's no real need to go super cheap on FanDuel because the normal guys are underpriced to where they should be. So keep in mind that if Ben Shepard is going to be in a winning lineup, he's going to have to outscore guys who like Andrew Nembhard or Aaron Neesmith or maybe even like Mikal Bridges or something. Like he has to actually be a meaningful fantasy producer, which is pretty unlikely.
And he just came through a series where he barely played. And the only game that he played was the game where they hemorrhaged all of their actual players. So I don't see it. Like he would have to go absolutely insane. Could he? Like, sure. Like all bets are off in game 1. He could play 18 minutes today and they cut something else and that could absolutely happen. But to take a stand, you want to tell me that you have like 5 to 10% of Ben Shepard. I wouldn't tell anybody not to do it. I just got done talking about Jarus Walker, but Anything much more than that is way too much.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of this too is that the Jarus Walker play, you're rostering him on DraftKings. Like, I'm sure with the same data and projections, if you upload to FanDuel, he would show up in 0%.
I would imagine that would be the case. Yeah. Yeah, FanDuel's just, you're not going to get different in the same way like that. And it doesn't strike me as a Ben Shepard series, but who knows? I think they'll be able to find plenty of offense elsewhere. If they got to get to him, something probably happened. Who wins? I ask you that question a lot too. Go with whatever you were going with there, and then Knicks.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've got the Knicks because I bet them to not like directly to win this series against the Pacers, but it kind of ended up being the case just because as soon as Jason Tatum got hurt, and I was like, oh, I think he tore his Achilles. I was betting Knicks futures. Yeah. You and I were messaging about that a little bit. So I do have I have a good number on the Knicks because of that. I've got the Knicks plus 150 to win this series. So I think they should be the favorite to win, mostly because they have home court advantage anyway. So I'm going to lean towards the Knicks. Is that the direction you're going?
There's something about this Pacers team that I think is just like destined to make this finals run this year. We'll see how that makes them react in the offseason, because I think that could be interesting. Maybe they'll finally decide to spend some money on the team if they can make the finals. I'm going to lean Pacers here. I think they get the win. I'm not comfortable there in any way, just to be clear.
It's a close competitive series. I'm not saying the Knicks are like 90% to win, or I think it's like 60-40 in favor of the Knicks, and almost entirely because they have home court advantage. But the other question I was going to ask you is there anything you're doing different at all in the captain spot? I'm not doing anything massively different, but I've got a couple of guys that I'm a little overweight to.
No, not really. It's just the main guys. I have more of Brunson now than I did before. I kind of don't want to. I might negative ROI boost his captain spot just like 5% or something to knock it down, because I have a little bit more of him than I would really want to. But it's really just the Cats, the Brunsons, the Halliburtons.
Okay. Yeah. So
I've got the scattered amounts of like the random guys at 5%, but no stands.
Malcolm Revamp left us a elite super chat. Wants to know, what players are we underweight to on DraftKings and FanDuel? So the guys that I'm underweight to, in a way that matters, it's Obi Toppin and Aaron Nesmith for me.
DraftKings, I am most under at the flex, at least, on Brunson, Bridges, Mathurin, and Nesmith. Most over on Siakam, Towns, McBride, and Walker. I have too much of Brunson in the captain, and I will hate that unless Nemhard's getting the job.
So those are the guys that I'm currently 10% underweight, but currently, as if anything's changing in the next 90 seconds. And then the guys I'm most overweight to in the flex spot, it's Miles McBride and Thomas Bryant. That's the list of players I'm over and underweight to the field to by 10%.
James Sarcone says Josh can't hold his hate for the Knicks. I don't hate them at all. I like them more than the Pacers. I like the Villanova guys a lot, but I don't know. There's something about this Pacers team. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the coaching. That's probably the tiebreaker for me. I think Rick Carlisle is a significantly better coach in these scenarios than Tom Thibodeau, and I think if he needs to make changes, he will. And I think Tibbs will be late to the draw. Not that he could. Well, I mean, Tibbs could be making these changes, but he didn't want to try to find out if any of his other players could play this season.
Between the Wolves and between the Pacers and the Knicks, which team would you give a better chance? Not that we would pick them, but a better chance to beat the Thunder.
I would say the Pacers. I think Turner could help them at the rim a little bit more than they're going to get out of the Knicks side. Tend to think that Brunson and Halliburton there is a bit of a wash. I think that's a really tough series for Towns. And I think they could find a little bit more. The Pacers are more interesting to me offensively in that kind of series. It's close, though. I mean, either one of them are going to be massive dogs to OKC.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely massive dogs. I'll side with the Knicks. Neither one of them likely to win, but I think the Knicks maybe a little bit more likely of the two. I'll give you guys where we're just at lock right now, but the actual game is going to start for another 12 minutes or whatever. I'll give you one bet before I head out to eat dinner. Karl-Anthony Towns, 16-1 to win Eastern Conference MVP. I think that line's a little wide, considering that he brings numbers to the table that if he's knocking down his shots, it's like he could definitely be somebody who ends up winning MVP. I think realistically, only Brunson and Towns are live to win the Eastern Conference MVP from the Knicks, unless there's some crazy outlier performances. But these awards usually are determined by who scores the most points, and Brunson's plus 200 and Cat's plus 1600.
This is going to sound really dumb because now you have me looking at that stuff. I completely agree with you that those odds seem a little long. Chet to win finals MVP is 50-1 right now. Shea is minus 220.
It's
whether
so
he's playing
hard.
the Pacers or the Knicks, I think those series are really good for Chet. Obviously the expectation is Shea. The expectation is Shea. But I think he would fall into really nice matchups there. I mean, the hell were Jaylen Brown's odds to win the finals MVP before last year?
It was actually he was
before the Eastern Conference Finals.
Oh,
probably pretty long.
Finals. Yeah, I don't remember. I know in the finals, I remember him being 4-1 or 5-1, something like that.
Yeah. Just that 50-1 stood out to me. Given how much I think OKC wins that series, he's twice as unlikely as Jalen Williams. But I think that could be a massive, massive Chet series at 50-1. Anyway, we're locked. The game will be live on playback. If we can get a competitive basketball game in the fourth quarter, I will be back to watch it on playback. I know Greg was popping into chat yesterday. I know I was sitting in chat for a little bit yesterday, but you guys can go to playback right now. Watch the game if you sign up. Potentially get a VIP pass if you don't. Get a 50% off a Stokastic single sport package by emailing support or DMing Greg if you sign up at playback. You ready to go watch some basketball?
Yeah, going to be doing some split screen. Going to be watching Oilers taking on the Stars, and then also going to be watching some of the basketball. So enjoy it. See you guys back here tomorrow.
Later, y'all.